Let's unmute.
Oh, that's a great start, isn't it?
We were just
Hello,
bopping
everybody.
together.
Hi, Rebecca, and hi, everyone. Welcome to our first live webinar in the OET Fundamentals series. This is the Intro to OET. I'm Alex from the OET Education team, and you know my colleague, OET expert, Rebecca.
Hi, and welcome to those joining us live on YouTube and Facebook. We've currently got 72 of you joining us through YouTube. Looks like we might be having a few difficulties with Facebook, but I'm sure our team behind the scenes are working to sort that out. So don't give up. We'll be with you very shortly. Also, hello to those watching the recording later. We have a big session today with plenty of time for questions too. So be sure to use the live chat or comment section to engage with us.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the purpose of this session is to give you a really good understanding of what OET is and how it can help you progress in your career as a healthcare professional. And this session is especially for those who are new to OET or considering which language test to take. But of course, if you're not new to OET, if you're very familiar with the test, please stay, and we're sure that you'll pick up and learn something new with us as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with a description of OET and cover how OET is different to other English language tests you may have been looking at. And we'll go through what's in the test and how it's scored. And finally, there's a question and answer session. Plus, we have a special giveaway for one lucky viewer at the end. So be sure to stick around for that.
Yes, very exciting. And I want to start today's session by running a quick confidence check. We'd like to know how you're feeling right now. So everyone watching with us on YouTube and Facebook, there's a question on the screen. How confident are you feeling about taking OET? And there's also a link in the chat box. Click that link and you can register your vote and share it with us. So 1 means I'm not confident at all about taking the test. 5, super confident. 3, you're in the middle, and you may be a 2 or a 4. So let us know. Either type your answer into the chat or follow the link and register your vote. How confident are you feeling? And let's have a look at some of the answers coming through. Okay. Oh, look, it's not too bad. We've got a couple down in the 1 section, but most people are around 3, so a little confident. So maybe you're feeling okay. You might know a little bit about the test, perhaps. But we want to see everybody up in the 5 zone, of course. So it looks like we're sitting at about 3.4 in terms of confidence. Let's see what we can do about that, Rebecca.
Absolutely. And I think coming through on the chats, I saw a few 4s and 5s in there as well. 3 is the predominant score that we've got coming through. But if you are joining us and you're new to OET, that's a very reasonable place to be. And we hope that after this session, everyone will be feeling more confident about their OET preparation. So let's get into it, starting with what is OET? So OET is the English test for healthcare professionals. And as an organization, healthcare is our passion. In fact, the OET company vision is to connect the world to better healthcare. And our mission statement that is behind everything we do here at OET is this: we set the benchmark for global healthcare communication skills through industry-wide collaboration to facilitate the mobility and development of healthcare professionals throughout their career. So yes, we are a language test, but our goal is to equip you with the communication skills you need in an English-speaking workplace, and also to help you move where you want to move geographically as well as professionally. To do this, we collaborate with important employers like the NHS in the UK, regulators such as the ECFMG in the United States, APRA in Australia, the GMC and NMC in the UK, as well as government immigration departments.
Beautiful. And that leads nicely into how OET is different to other language tests. So perhaps a question for those of you watching, or what do you think about this question already? Why are you interested in taking OET? What makes OET different to other language tests? Let me know what you think in the chat box. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to tell you what we think makes OET different to other language tests. And there's quite a few things. So first of all, OET is developed. Sorry. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to get myself off the screen. There we go. Oh, excuse the technical problems. So firstly, OET is developed in consultation with subject matter experts. So what this means is that real working doctors, nurses, physios, pharmacists, vets, all the OET professions work with us to create the test format itself, the tasks that make up the test, and they also work with us for each test question to check that it's accurate and relevant in the field. And so test materials, OET test materials, replicate the language skills required to deliver patient safety and quality care. So as I mentioned, the test itself was developed in collaboration with professionals who advise on what makes a good nurse, what makes a good doctor, what makes a good vet, and so on. And the tasks that are used in OET ask you to use language in a way that is realistic and practical. And so when you're preparing for OET, you learn the type of language that you're going to need at work in an English-speaking healthcare work environment. So I want to mention something here, which is this word washback. It's perhaps not a very familiar term to some of you. Does anyone know? Let's open it up again. Does anyone know this term, washback? And when you think of this word, you might imagine something like a wave or an ocean. Let me see in the chat if anyone's got some ideas. What does it mean, washback? Okay, so this is a term quite specific to assessment and to language assessment. And basically, washback is the impact or the effect of assessment. So the impact of assessment on teaching and learning. So for instance, when I took a driving test, when I wanted to get my driving license, part of the assessment, this part was a practical driving test. So in my learning phase, I had to learn things like using my indicators correctly, doing a 3-point turn, parallel parking. My teacher made me do those things over and over. And of course, the great thing about learning those skills is, yes, I passed my driving test, but I use those skills every day. So I have to use those skills in the real world, out there on the roads. And that's what makes OET so different and so special. The test is designed so that you have to learn those skills, not just language skills, but also soft skills, professional skills that will help you after the test as well. I'll just put the definition up here for those interested. So the technical definition is a term used in education to describe the influence, whether beneficial or damaging, of an assessment on the teaching and learning that precedes and prepares for that assessment. So if we compare OET to other tests, and you're probably familiar with some of them, and think about, for instance, the writing test. So if you were taking a general or an academic English test, in the writing part, you might have to write an essay on a general topic, which is a great skill if you're going to university or going to high school, but not that useful if you're going to work in a hospital. So in OET, your writing test is to write a healthcare letter based on case notes, just as you would in the workplace. And when it comes to speaking, in a general or academic English test, you might have an interview on general topics. You might have to describe a TV show or explain why crime rates are increasing or suggest ways to reduce plastic in the oceans. But in OET speaking, You play your professional role and speak with a patient just as you would in your real job. And as we'll see later, you're demonstrating and you're assessed on how effectively you manage that consultation. So how you deal with sensitive topics, for instance, how you reassure and show empathy, how you explain technical terms rather to a non-medical person. Okay, but why healthcare? Why a healthcare specific test? Well, OET, of course, is always striving to connect the world to better healthcare. And a research study that we conducted in 2013 found that limited language proficiency is an obstacle or a barrier to effective communication, affecting quality of care. So OET exists to overcome this problem. We want our candidates to pass their test and bring their language skills into the workforce. So we want OET candidates to practice safely and effectively. So in addition to that, there are crippling healthcare skills shortages, as you know, in many English-speaking countries. There are aging populations putting pressure on the healthcare systems. There's an increased consumer expectation and a focus on patient-centered care, so not just on language proficiency here. And of course, the costs of errors in communication are huge, both financially and in terms of safety. OET, of course, is a valid and reliable test. It's created by the makers of IELTS, tests all 4 language skills, and undergoes regular analysis to confirm its validity and reliability. That is, the test assesses what it's supposed to assess, and everyone taking the test anywhere, anytime, has the same experience and the same chance of success. Of course, OET is accepted internationally by healthcare regulators and educational institutions, including the GMC, NMC, General Pharmaceutical Council and APRA, and also in Australia, New Zealand and the UK for visa and migration purposes. And for you guys, for the test takers, OET is a truly global test as well. And there are 3 delivery modes, 3 ways that you can take OET. And I wonder if you know all 3 of them. I'm sure most of you know probably or very familiar with one of our test types. Do you know all 3 delivery modes? Let me know in the chat. Thank you. And thanks for those sending questions through. We're going to get to those soon. I'll give you a clue. I'll give you the first one, which is OET on paper. So OET on paper has been around for 30 years. Currently, it's available in over 174 venues in 46 countries and growing all the time. Thank you. Emeka says paper and online. Well done. And at home, you got all 3. Well done. So the second delivery mode, as you said, is OET on computer. This is taken at a test venue. So the same format as OET on paper, but on a computer. This is currently available in 196 cities worldwide, 61 of which are in the US. And also we are trying to grow this all the time. And lastly, this year we launched OET at home, the same test that you know, but taken at your home with remote proctoring, which means supervision, extra supervision to ensure the security of the test. And last but not least, there are 12 versions of OET, 12 versions for 12 different professions. Hopefully you can find your own in this list here. All right.
We've had some really great questions coming through, Alex. I thought we'd pick up on this one because it's just about what you were discussing. There's a little bit in there. There's been some conversation going backwards and forwards between a couple of the candidates, but I thought we could pick up on this bit about the difference between OET and IELTS, because you touched on that a little bit. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're both high stakes language tests, and in some cases they can be used for the same purpose. IELTS, if you're a health professional, you'll probably be taking IELTS academic. And so really they are completely different tests, but they are both testing your reading, writing, listening, and speaking in different ways. So as we mentioned before, for example, IELTS writing, you'll be writing about describing a graph as part of your test, or a visual, or a flow chart, for instance, and you write an essay. In OET, the writing test is to write a letter to another healthcare professional. So they're both scored by humans, both using criteria, but the criteria used are completely different. And I guess from our point of view, of course, we're very biased as here at OET, but the OET criteria is very specific to healthcare. So the letter, the task itself was built based on what a healthcare professional wants to see in a letter. So you're scored on things like, is the content relevant? Does the organization make the information easily accessible to the reader? So it's very specific to healthcare, the OET. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think in the next parts of tonight's session, where we go into the test in a little bit more detail, some of those differences and the reasons why candidates feel preparing for OET is also preparing them for their future career will become more and more clear. So thanks for that, Alex. Some other questions coming through are a little bit more specific than we're going to be able to cover tonight. But remember, I have a Q&A live session every fortnight. I'll be back again next week with one of those, and the events for that will be going up very shortly. So stay tuned for those questions next week, but we're very happy to answer other questions that you might have about choosing the test, or how the test is accepted around the world.
Absolutely.
So let's go into covering what's in the test itself. So we've covered why OET is unique. We think obviously it's the best language test for healthcare professionals, but maybe the best way for you to make that decision is to see for yourself what's in the test. So the listening test is the first test that you do on test day. And I'd like you to tell me in the chat what you already know about OET listening. So can you tell me how many questions there are in the test, how many parts there are to it, how long does it take, for example, and what kinds of audio are you going to hear in the listening test? So any of those facts, if you can answer those for me into the chat, that would be great. I'm sure there's some of you who are very familiar with this format of the test. That's great. Yes, Ratna's coming through. There are 3 parts, and Surush is saying 42 questions. And 3 parts, yes, absolutely, from Srush as well. Yes, 42 questions. So you've got those 2 important parts of the test correct. You can see on the screen now a few different answers coming through on chat for how long the listening test lasts. It's roughly around 40 minutes with the 3 parts of the test. And in part A, you hear 2 separate consultations between a healthcare professional and a patient. And your job is to fill in the notes as you listen. In part B, you hear 6 short dialogues or monologues in workplace settings, each with a multiple choice question. And in part C, you hear audio similar to what you might hear in a presentation, podcast, or interview. So audios you'd use for professional development. And there are 6 multiple choice questions per audio here. So the listening test covers both professional to patient interaction and communication, workplace interaction, and professional development situations. Reading is the next part of test day, and I'm going to ask you the same questions about the reading test. What can you tell me about the reading test in the chat box? How many parts are there? How long does it take? And what kinds of texts will you see in the reading test? Just give you 10 more seconds to answer that. A lot of responses, still coming through about the listening test, which is great. Neat is saying for reading 42 questions and 3 parts. Very good. Most of you know Ratna, Eileen, Linda all saying yes, 3 parts. Mahesh and Dels are both saying it takes an hour of 60 minutes. Mahesh, yes, 60 minutes. And one of the texts, Nita's saying it might have a manual in it. Absolutely. So good knowledge, well done. So like listening, there are 3 parts to the reading test, and they take 60 minutes to complete, following a very similar pattern too. So part A of the reading test is the kind of text you deal with when consulting with a patient. You have 4 texts that are on a related topic, and your task here is to locate information quickly and answer the questions in 15 minutes. In part B, like you can see on the screen, there are 6 short workplace texts, each with 1 question. And these are the kinds of things you might find in your workplace. So things like policy documents, instructions, memos, hospital guidelines. And part C, like part C in listening, is a professional development context. You have 2 long texts with 8 multiple choice questions per text to answer, and part B and C combined take 45 minutes. I can see those responses coming through on the chat. And all professions, we mentioned a few minutes ago that there are 12 versions of OET for 12 different healthcare professions. All professions do the same listening and reading tests, and the topics are chosen to be of interest, but also relevant to all of these healthcare professions. And in our next session, Alex is going to talk about how to prepare for the test in more detail. But for now, I'd like you to tell me how often you are currently reading and listening in English. So you can see the poll on the screen. This one we just want you to answer in the chat. So let me know if you're reading and listening in English all the time, which is a 3, sometimes, which is a 2, or never, which is a 1. And it doesn't have to be healthcare related reading and listening. It could be reading and listening for pleasure, watching a film, listening to music, reading a book that is for pleasure rather than for work purposes. How often are you reading and listening in English? Sorry, I'd got the scale a little bit wrong. 5 being all of the time. I've got 1 person coming through with a 5, which is great. A lot of you saying sometimes. And Eileen, that's fair enough. A 3 because I'm still working. We know all of our healthcare professionals are really busy individuals, and they're squeezing so much into life at the moment. So lots of 3s, 4s and 5s, which is a really positive answer to see, because obviously the more that you read and listen, the more your vocabulary is going to develop in English, the more stamina you'll build up for being able to concentrate for longer periods of time in listening and reading. Now, we've touched briefly on writing already, but just to recap this part of the test, you're given a task that is specific to your profession in the form of a set of clinical case notes. And your task is to write a letter using those case notes, and it's usually a referral letter. And you're given 5 minutes to read the case notes to make sure you fully understand what the situation is about and what information you need to communicate. And then you have 40 minutes to write your letter. And finally, the speaking test, which consists of 2 role plays. It takes around 20 minutes to complete the speaking test. And if you're taking the speaking test online, either on a computer at a venue or at home, this will take a little bit longer because you will do it via Zoom, and you need to allow for the security checks before the role plays to take place. But the actual test itself will take around 20 minutes. And during the speaking test, you play your health professional role, and the interlocutor working with you will take the. Now, as I mentioned, more about preparation in the next fundamental session, this time tomorrow. But if you're keen to dive into the subtests already, make sure you use your OET study guide. And we're going to share the link to this now in the chat. And this contains everything you need to know about the subtests. It's got everything in the one place. So it includes links to masterclasses, to the sample tests, guided lessons, and details of live classes for you to watch. So be sure to make the most of it. There's a lot of it there for you to read, and you can pick and choose, either going straight for a section that you particularly want to focus on, or if you really want to start at the beginning and work your way through it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just work with it in the best way that fits for you. So let's talk now about scoring OET. And there's a lot of information on the website about scoring, but some of it could be a little confusing or feel complicated, and it really is quite simple and straightforward. So let's look at it together. Now, the highest score in OET that you can get is a letter grade A, which corresponds to a numeric score between 450 and 500. But most candidates are aiming for a B grade, which is between 350 and 450 as a numeric score. At this level, you can communicate effectively with patients and health professionals using appropriate register, tone, and lexis, with only occasional inaccuracies and hesitations. And you can show good understanding of any kind of written or spoken language. And grade B is equivalent to an IELTS band 7 to 7.5, or for those of you who are familiar with the CEFR, a C1 level. So what score do you need for OET? Well, different regulating bodies in different countries have different requirements. But as an example, if you want to register with the Nursing and Midwifery Council, the NMC in the UK, you will need at least a C+ in writing and at least a B grade in the listening, reading, and speaking tests. Now, when you've taken OET, your results are reported on a statement results, which looks just like this on the screen now. And you can see your numeric and letter grades for each subtest. And there's actually no overall score for OET. Each subtest has an individual grade, and it's that individual grade that the regulator is going to be asking you for. And these results can be checked by the regulators and those recognizing organizations we've mentioned through a secure online portal. You provide them access to check your results, and this is just another layer to the security of OET. We're going to play a short video now, which I think really clearly explains the assessment process.
Ever wondered how your test answers get turned into OET results? Let's go through the steps together, from assessors to score scaling, and finally to the results you receive. Meet Priya. Priya is a nurse from Kerala. She has just taken OET. These are Priya's OET answers. Now that Priya has finished sitting OET, they're sent to our highly qualified assessors. Each assessor undertakes ongoing training. This ensures their assessment skills and knowledge are consistent with our high standards for a healthcare-specific test. To make sure everything is fair, Priya's answers are randomly assigned to and double-marked by at least 2 assessors. To ensure consistency and reliability, they use a marking guide and assessment criteria for different parts of the test. Both the criteria and marking guides reflect the types of communication Priya will undertake in an English-speaking environment. If these 2 assessors mark the answers differently, a third independent assessor will also mark her answers. Priya's scores are then adjusted accordingly. But before Priya receives her final scores, they're sent away to a department of the world-famous University of Cambridge. Here, a team of assessment experts conduct statistical analysis to ensure her scores genuinely reflect her ability. OET materials go through a robust development process prior to test day. Alongside our statistical analysis, this guarantees there is no advantage or disadvantage when you take OET at different dates. In other words, a test that seems harder does not mean you receive lower scores. Our procedures ensure everyone receives a fair go, no matter when they take OET. By the time Priya receives her final scores, her answers have been checked, rechecked and checked again to ensure everything is fair and correct. Priya's scores are provided on a scale to give her a clear indication of her ability in each skill area. So just remember, our assessors receive ongoing training to ensure they continue to meet our high standards. Your answers are marked by several different assessors at different stages and are closely monitored for consistency and accuracy. Your scores are also analysed, ensuring you receive a fair result no matter when you sit OET. In other words, our assessment process turns this into this, so you can go from here to here.
So I hope you found that useful. I think that was a really great explanation of the assessment process. And as we've seen, the tests for reading and listening have 42 questions, and the writing and speaking tests are scored using criteria. And these scores go through a number of processes to be converted into a score out of 500. So for instance, in listening, there are 42 questions and 42 marks. But as we saw in the video, some questions are weighted more than others. And these weightings and of course the questions are different in each test. So you can't accurately convert a raw score to a final score out of 500. But a good goal, if you're aiming for a B or above, is to be getting 30 or higher as a result in your official OET practice tests. And the same goes for reading. There are 42 questions and 42 marks, and you should aim for 30 or more when practicing with official materials. Writing and speaking are scored differently, but they're still assessed by 2 or more assessors. And writing assessors use 6 criteria to score your writing, and speaking assessors use 9 criteria. Back to you, Alex.
Wonderful. So let's pick up on the writing and speaking scoring system. And I'll start with the writing criteria, which looks like this. And it's really important that you get to know this criteria before the test, because it tells you exactly what you need to do to score well. And as I mentioned, this criteria is completely different to IELTS criteria or other test criteria. So it's important to read it. Let's have a quick look at it together. And you can see that the first criterion is purpose. And the maximum score for this one is 3. So this is when your purpose or the reason you're writing is immediately apparent and sufficiently expanded. Now, the other 5 criteria are not scored out of 3, they're scored out of 7. And they are content, conciseness and clarity, genre and style, organization and layout, and finally, language. And we're going to share in the chat box a link now to our writing guide, because this goes into really, really great depth and detail about each of these. So it's absolutely a must read for you as you prepare for OET. So just grab that link from the chat box now. So as we saw in the video, again, your scores go through some analyses and processes before your final grade is reached, and you're scored by at least 2 assessors. But if you are aiming at grade B or above, you should be scoring 2 out of 3 for purpose and 5 out of 7 for the other criteria, just as an indication. So this is what you should be aiming for when you're practicing and when someone's checking your work. Maybe a teacher is checking your work for you. Okay, we're going to talk about OET speaking, but I also want to just ask you this question first. When you're at work and when you're speaking to your colleagues or speaking to your patients or clients, what are the important things for you? What helps you communicate with them? What do you want from them? What do they want from you? So for Rebecca and I, for instance, if we're talking to our colleagues in marketing or they're talking to us, we try to give really clear instructions. If we're talking to our finance department, I want them to use really simple language, not technical jargon, not acronyms that I don't understand. So how about for you when you're in your workplace? What are the important things? Is it perfect grammar? Is it clear pronunciation? Is it confidence? Thank you. So here's a nice one. Good listener and empathy. That's great. Yeah. And Asma says politeness, need to be a good listener, empathy. Good to see that. You guys know your OET criteria well. And those are exactly the kind of things that are in the OET speaking criteria. So this is what it looks like. And there are two different sorts. Let me remove myself so you can see. And the criteria was built based on research into healthcare communication, like what makes an effective communicator. And there are two parts to it, linguistic and clinical communication. So the assessors give you a score for 4 linguistic criteria and 6 clinical, and your final score comes from that. Okay, so this is the linguistic criteria, and you're scored on intelligibility. That is, how easy is it to understand your speech? You're also scored on fluency, that is the rate or the pace and the flow of your speech. The third criterion is appropriateness. So how suitable is your tone, your register or your level of formality, and the words that you use? How suitable are they for the situation? Do you sound professional and polite? Can you explain technical words to a non-medical person? And lastly, assessors are considering your resources of grammar and expression, how you use vocab and grammar to communicate effectively. So the assessors give you a score for each of these criteria, each 4, so 4 separate scores. Now, the clinical communication, these look a little bit different, and these are the skills that senior health professionals told us non-native speakers struggle with in the workplace. So we built them into the test. So as you learn and prepare for the test, you're preparing for the workplace. And the 5 criteria are relationship building, understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective, information gathering, information giving. So let's just we'll zoom in on relationship building as an example. So within this criterion, as you're going through your role play, the assessors are listening and considering how well did you initiate the interaction? How appropriately did you start the consultation? Did you introduce yourself if you've never met before? Did you explain your role if that was relevant? Did you outline what's going to happen in the consultation? This all depends, of course, on the task that you receive. The second A2, assessors want to hear evidence that you are demonstrating an attentive and respectful attitude and adopting a non-judgmental approach. So you don't just dismiss or ignore your patient's concerns, and certainly don't belittle them. And finally, in this section, assessors are listening for evidence that you're showing empathy, genuine empathy, not just saying memorized empathetic phrases without feeling. And so for this criterion, relationship building, the assessor rates your performance from 0 to 3. So 3 is adept or really, really good. 2 is competent, it's okay. 1, partially effective, and 0 is ineffective use. So remember that you have 2 role plays to demonstrate that you are adept. And the assessors, of course, listen to both very carefully. So this is the clinical criteria. And I'll just mention here that this criteria is available through the website. So this is the OET website here. I'm on the speaking page. And if you scroll down, this is where you download the criteria. So yes, it's publicly available. And there's also a checklist and glossary here, which goes into more detail about the criteria. So we're sharing that in the chat box now. And of course, you'll find it in your study guide as well. But just keep in mind the criteria is available and really important that you get to know it. So in terms of scores for listening, of course, you'll be aiming as high as you can, but a good target, if you're aiming for grade B, suggested targets in the linguistic criteria, aim for 5s out of 6. And in the clinical criteria, you should be aiming for 2 out of 3. And that way you'll be more likely to score a B. Of course, getting feedback from OET experts would be really, really useful for you to know where you're sitting here. So we're almost at the end of our session. And let's see, we're going to do a quick recap here. And we're going to do our recap in the form of a quiz, just for fun.
Yeah, we love a quiz, and so do the candidates. They always respond really well to quiz questions. So we've got 5 questions for you. Just add your answers into the chat box, and at the same time, start thinking of your own questions that you'd like to ask us about OET. And after that, we're going to do our giveaway. So stay tuned right to the end for that as well. Mm-hmm. So let's start with question 1. And this question is, which OET subtests are specific to your profession? So we've got listening, reading, writing, and speaking. You can see the timer is very fast. So choose A, B, C, or D. Which OET professions are specific to your profession? Writing and speaking. Very good.
I'm going to leave longer time next time. I think that was a bit quick.
Right. So yeah, Sarah got there with writing, and yeah, they're coming through on the chat now. So writing and speaking are specific to your profession. Listening and reading will be the same for everybody taking OET, regardless of whether you're a dentist, a nurse, a doctor, a physio, or any of our 12 professions. All right, that was the warm-up. Alex is going to give us a little bit longer for the next one. How many parts do the OET listening and reading tests have? A1, B2, C3, or D4? Fingers on the screens now. What do you think is the answer?
Oh, I think Kayla was first there. Well done.
I think Kayla was first. And most people, I think, if not everybody, is getting that answer correct. So yes, we talked it through earlier. There are 3 parts to the listening and reading subtests. Absolutely. All right, moving on. Let's look at question 3. At least how many assessors mark your performance in speaking and writing? So this was something you would have seen in that video we showed earlier. Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? How many assessors mark your performance? Time's ticking down. I think Kayla might have been pipped this time by Surush, but very quick again. The correct answer is at least 2. There could be 3, as we saw in the video, if those 2 original assessors don't agree entirely on your score, but at least 2 for every part of the test. In fact, not just speaking and writing, listening and reading as well. 2 assessors will mark your performance. And question 4. Alex was just talking about these. There are 2 types of criteria in OET speaking: linguistic criteria and what? What's the name of the other criteria that you are assessed for in OET speaking? This could be a challenge for your spelling, but have a good go at it.
Speed typing challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think between everybody, we've got both of the words that we need. So some people have said clinical, some people have said communication. And if we put the 2 together, we get the answer. They are clinical communication criteria. And these are the types of communication examples, as Alex was mentioning, that demonstrate you can speak naturally and easily with patients. And our final question, before we turn to questions that you might have, you receive an overall score on your OET statement of results. Is this true or is this false? time's up, and it is false. Yes, there is no overall score in OET, which is a little bit different to some of the other high stakes tests that are out there. It doesn't mean that anything is lacking for OET. It's just the way that the regulators accept OET results is the grade that you receive for each individual subtest. So thank you for participating in the quiz. Now we'd love to answer any questions that you have. And you can ask us questions about OET. If we can't answer your question, it might be a customer service related question. We'll let you know how to contact them. But we've got a few minutes now to answer questions you might have.
All right, let's have a look. I did see a few earlier which have already passed by, but there were a few people asking about reading, Rebecca, how to improve in reading, and in particular, the final part of reading, which is dealing with a big text. I guess that's a fairly general question. What can we do to boost our reading skills getting ready for OET? Any advice?
I think it's one a lot of people ask and would like to know, because it depends, I think, a lot on how much you enjoy reading in your everyday. And that question we asked you a little bit earlier, how much are you reading and listening every day, really comes down to this, because I'm a really big believer in stamina. And Alex talked earlier about passing your driving test. Well, I'm going to talk about being successful in a marathon or a long running race. You obviously need stamina to be able to get through a long race. And OET is not a race, but those texts that you're being given and shown in Part C are longer. There's around 700 words in each of those texts that you need to read. And so if you're not regularly reading that amount of words and concentrating quite intensively on that amount of words, then your brain will say, hang on, this is hard work. I don't like doing it. So you really do need to train your brain to have stamina for the reading test. And the best way to do that, in fact, is just to read every day. And as we talked earlier, it doesn't always have to be preparation materials for OET. It can be other things that you're interested in. But those two things together, reading and every day, are also going to develop your vocabulary and increase your speed at being able to read more quickly in English. So stamina and just doing some of it every day is really my best tip for now on reading Part C.
Read is the crux of it. Damas has a good question. What's the best way to build a relationship with a patient for the first time? So Damas, that's a really great question. And as you know, in the speaking test, it can, the situation or the setting is always something different. So it's really important that you read and check, as you've said here, have you met the patient before, or is it an ongoing, a regular patient of yours? And I would recommend here, look at the relationship building criterion, because that really tells you what you need to do. You need to adopt an attentive and non-judgmental approach. You need to show empathy. I think just consider this a normal interaction with a patient that you haven't met before. It's normal that you would introduce yourself. It's normal to confirm their identity. It's probably suitable to outline what you're going to talk about today. Another piece of advice I want to give is to have a look on our YouTube channel. We have a playlist all about OET speaking. And within that section, there's a playlist by our friends at Swoosh, who run weekly live mock tests. And by watching those, I think you'll get some really good advice from their teachers as well on where people might be going a little bit wrong with their initiation of the consultation. And you'll see some really good examples of people doing a good job as well.
Great. I've got a question here about OET at home. So Alex mentioned earlier, this is the newest way that you can take the test around the world. And right now, OET at Home is available to nursing and medicine candidates, although we do hope to extend that to more of our OET professions in the years ahead. But for now, OET at Home is available if you live in a country that doesn't have a physical test venue. So if you don't have the option to take the test on paper or on computer at a venue, then you should well be eligible for OET at home. We'll just need to run some other checks with you to make sure there's secure internet connection, you've got a suitable device and so forth to be able to take the test securely at home. But if those things are all ticked off, then you should be eligible to take OET at home. And the main thing I would just say about taking any of those three types of tests is the test is the same, whether you take it on paper, on computer at a venue, or at home. The questions that you see, the time that you have, the way that it's assessed is all done exactly the same. It's just the different way of taking the test. And some candidates prefer to take it on a computer, some prefer on paper. And so we're making those options available to you. So if you're interested in taking OET at home, then visit the OET website and you'll find more information there about how to do so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question a lot of people probably have. I want free OET materials. Where can I get them? So good news is there are a lot of free OET materials. Perhaps the best place to start is the study guide, which we shared before. And I will just try and grab that link.
I can
again.
do it, Alex.
Ah, thank you.
Carry on.
So the study guide is a compilation of heaps and heaps of, I was going to say all our resources, not all our resources, but a lot of our resources, and the majority of them are free. And it goes through the basics of OET with links to videos, to masterclasses, blog posts, articles, and so on. So start with the study guide. There's also the OET preparation portal, which you'll find on our website. And of course, YouTube and Facebook, you'll find regular live streams from our All-Stars. Those are premium OET teachers or providers, and they are regularly running classes on our channels, totally free. And really a really excellent way to boost your preparation, because it can be tough preparing on your own. So if you can jump into live streams like this, jump into the OET streams as well. And any other advice on that, Rebecca, for more freebies?
No, I think you've covered it. The study guide really does put everything into the one place. And we really do obviously encourage you to study with official materials. We know there are a lot of unofficial materials floating around the internet, and you may even be passed some of those materials very kindly, very helpfully, as they think they are by friends or colleagues. But if they're unofficial, there could be problems with quality. They may be out of date, misrepresent the test. So the best place to get really good preparation is from OET directly. And the study guide will really help you to know how to pick those materials and who you can trust. And Alex, I'd just like to share this from Ian, because I think it's great to hear from candidates themselves. And Ian's really advocating for reducing mobile phone usage to help with preparation, to get 100% focus and concentration. And I think that's a really good point, Ian. It goes back to the answer I was giving about reading. These days, scrolling things very, very quickly, and it's a different type of reading that you need to be successful in Part C. It needs to be more deliberate reading carefully for understanding and meaning. So I think you're right, and that was a really good response. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, something we can all take on board, I think, there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we're getting close to our hour here. So we might move on to our giveaway. So we are going to give away, let's see.
Do you want to do the poll just before that, Alex?
I would like to do the poll just before that. Thank you. All right. So earlier at the start of today, we asked you this question, how confident are you feeling about taking OET? And we were hoping that through this session, you would be feeling more confident, at least more confident in finding resources. You've got the study guide now. Rebecca's Q&A is coming up soon. Tell us again, follow the link or just type into the chat box. How confident are you feeling about taking OET? 1, not at all. 3, a bit, or 5, super confident. Let's see if we've got any movement from before. So I think we were 3.4 before. Let's go up a little bit.
It's definitely more positive in the chat. More 4s are coming through.
And that's totally fine. You're not gonna build Rome in one day. One hour session is not going to be the answer to all of your prayers, but hopefully this has given you an idea of how to get started. And of course, we've got 3 more sessions in this OET Fundamentals series. So as we go along, hopefully we'll get to answer all your questions and provide you with the resources that you need to really study and prepare effectively. All right. Thanks, everyone, for participating. So now we're up to our giveaway. And so we want to say thank you for coming along today and give a free OET Pulse voucher to one of you. OET Pulse is usually $30, and we have one free one to give away. Pulse is a short test of your listening, reading, and language knowledge. It gives you an indication of your current level and provides you with material to improve, particularly in the areas where you need help. And to go into the competition, all you need to do in the chat, type #intro, #intro, and you are going to be in the running to win. I'll give you just a second to do that. So type it into the chat if you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook, type #chat, and that's it. You're in the running to win. We're going to bring it up in just a second. Thanks, everyone. Are you right, Rebecca, or shall I?
Yeah, I can share the screen. I'm just going to hit 50 maybe. Oh, we've hit 50 entries, so I'm going to share it now. You should be able to see. And tell me when you want me to draw.
Yeah, a little bit more time. So type #intro. We're going to hit the button and a random name will come up and you will be the winner. Let's see, maybe 5 more seconds.
All right.
4, 3, 2, 1. Good luck.
It's going. Whoa.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Lovely to see all the pictures. Slowing down.
Who's going to win? Tijo, you are the winner. Congratulations to you. Tijo, send us an email, oeteducation@oet.com.au. Grab a screenshot if you can. You have won the free Pulse voucher. So congratulations to you. Thanks to everyone else. There will be more chances to win in the coming days. So oeteducation@oet.com.au for Tijo. We will look out for your email. Well done. All right. Thank you, everyone. So we are at the end of our Intro to OET session. And tomorrow, same time, same place, we are going to talk about how to prepare. So I'm going to go into some more detail about the study guide and about those free resources that we offer at OET, plus some of our paid resources as well. And again, I'll answer your questions and we will do a Pulse giveaway. And thank you, Rebecca, for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
And we'll see everyone again tomorrow.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Bye for now.